What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. I did it wrong again. Shut up, David. How's everybody doing on this Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, for episode number 128? David, we're here for some reason still. Why are you back?
I don't know. I don't know why I'm back. Especially you. Someone like you aboard.
Why you gotta be so mean?
Mastering the ship. I don't know.
Why you gotta be so rude? Like, you're just aggressive right now. I did force you to come on almost today, so because you're not feeling well. I'm not feeling great.
I'm more angry.
Well, everyone. Here's the thing. I think with the weather and everything going on, like everyone's just quite literally weird right now. And leftists are going to call it climate change. I'm going to say no. But anyway, we're going to jump right into it. If you are watching on YouTube and X, hi, hello, thank you so much, David. I also added Facebook, so we can get kicked off of there in like 3.5 minutes.
I was going to say, but, like, what?
I mean, we're streaming on the Facebook page for the Alex Cuesta Show, also on my personal one.
We need to make the perfect boomer memes in order to really get going on Facebook. Just, put like...
Listen.
Put like God and Jesus in there and say like, oh, like us if you're against Satan. And then people will just go ahead and do it.
I might actually do that and just do a whole bunch of like Trump as like God, like that they've been doing. Like, didn't the guy the other day say about worshiping Trump? I mean, we really have to start worshiping Barron because in 17 years he's going to come back as like basically like Julius Caesar and like ride back.
We'll just get like everybody. The 40K looking Trump where he's God Emperor, the one that was in Italy. I don't know if you remember that statue.
I do remember that. That was awesome. So, yep, everyone, thanks so much for watching wherever you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on X, YouTube, subscribe, smash the like button over there, X, follow, spread this word of mouth. We're on our quest with our subs. Dave, we went up one in YouTube. We're at 69.
Nice.
Some would say the perfect number, but for over on X, we lost one again. People hate us on X. We're at 3,594. We're trying. Our quest should be to get back up to 3,600, not 4,000. Like, come on, people, be nice to us here. So I want to real quick. Last week's show, we had an interesting show. We had my buddy on, Rhetoric, friend from home. He's a live streamer, creator, host over at Soul Speak, and he's very much a libertarian. And we talked all about libertarian things and conservatism. And Dave, I thought it was a really good, engaging conversation.
It was. And it was one of our longer shows.
It was. It went on, and we'll have Rhetoric on again. He's debating on bringing Soul Speak back. He hasn't done it in a little while. Life happens. But he's thinking about coming back on. But I want to bring on our guest today. We are excited because we've had some other congressional candidates on. But this is going to be our first congressional candidate that is on with us live. We are going to bring her in right now. She took my spot. Why? What's going on here? Why is it switching? She is Alison Esposito, a 25-year veteran of the NYPD, former candidate for lieutenant governor, and candidate for Congress in New York's 18th Congressional District. Alison, what's going on?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on the show.
We're good. We're excited. And yeah, you are. We've had other congressional candidates on before. We had Derek Evans, Mara Macy, Dahlia Lakiti. Who else did we have, Dave? We had one other one. Billy Prempa. From New Jersey.
Don't forget.
Can't forget Prempa. Billy's awesome. Yeah. But Alison, you're our first ever live one, so we're excited for that.
Well, I'm excited as well.
And it means a lot to me because, full disclosure, I am working to get Alison elected, not only on this podcast, but I'm also a part of my local GOP committee. And that's, I just want to be full disclosure there before the internet sleuths go and look and be like, that wasn't right. Like, no, but our committee, Alison is a part of the group that we are trying to get elected. So full disclosure, so we don't have any internet trolls just trying to be like, well, that was improper. So I want to cover our bases there, Alison.
I like the voiceover. That was is that the official internet troll voice?
I really just channel my inner like Media Matters person. I feel like everyone from Media Matters sounds that way. Like, oh, we're gonna get them now.
It's okay, all right. We're gonna do some. Maybe we'll shoot some B-roll commercials with you voiceovering that. I think that might work.
It might work, or it might just lose you the campaign for that voice. So we might not do that at all.
We have a 50-50 shot at that.
Yeah. So I want to start right away with you because I want to talk to you about some of your policies, some of your most important ones, and things like that, and give you a chance to really talk about what you want to do, what you would do when you get to Congress. So obviously, it's an election year as well for the presidential general election, and that always adds a level to everything going on, right? And I went on record last week saying that I think that at this point, I think Trump's going to beat Biden. I think that's pretty clear, but I think the Democrats are abandoning Biden at this point, and they're trying to go down ballot. because whether Trump wins, if they can flip the House and Senate, they're going to impeach him and remove him. So a race like yours is ridiculously important because it would be a seat flip against Pat Ryan. So one of your big policies is the economy. And I want to talk about small businesses because that's something that's important to you, something important in the Hudson Valley. So what is your stance on what's been going on with small businesses post-COVID, and how are we going to work to get them back?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack with just that opening. You're right. This is probably one of the most important seats in the country. In fact, the GOP and the NRCC has it as a top 3 to 5 flip seat. It's being watched nationally. And it's important to point out. So my opponent, Pat Ryan, a career politician who's on the wrong side of all the issues, when he ran in 2022, Lee and I, as the gubernatorial and lieutenant gubernatorial candidates, Lee and I won this district by 3 full points. Awesome. Pat Ryan was only able to eke out a victory by about 1.5 points because the individual that was running against him had taken some, I believe it was taking votes in the assembly while he was in the assembly that the voters just didn't forget. So Pat Ryan got lucky with pulling out this seat.
And I'll say this about Pat real quick. Pat is a false blue dog Democrat. He ran as a blue dog, as a military guy, and someone that was going to be more middle of the wrong. And I do say that when he was the county executive, he worked a little bit more that way. He was still very left, but was willing to do some more things at the county level because obviously local is different. But since he's gotten to Congress, he's just been a Pelosiite.
So he loves to talk a moderate game, right?
Yes,
and he touts his West Point graduation and his service in our military. Now, don't get me wrong. I thank him for his service to our country. I thank anyone who's willing to put on that uniform and go into harm's way to protect our freedom. I absolutely 1000% thank him, and I'm grateful for what he did. But I would submit that the second he took off that uniform, he stopped his service to the American people. Yep. And as far as talking the moderate game and then acting a different way, when he was the Ulster County executive, he made Ulster County a sanctuary county. He refused to cooperate with ICE and law enforcement. What's more is when I was a New York City cop, remember those mostly peaceful protests, riots that were happening in New York City? So while I was in those riots, and it was like Braveheart, charge and retreat, and I was cutting the pant legs off of officers that had been ignited due to incendiary devices, and our officers were in vans while they were throwing Molotov cocktails in, and I myself got hit in the head with a kitchen cabinet that came off a roof.
Holy
Luckily,
shit.
I had a helmet on, but I cut open my arm, and we couldn't even seek medical attention because it was 72 hours of constant fight. Now, they went on for weeks, but that first 72 hours, man, that was something else. And they would leave bricks along the protest route to be able to throw at us. And I had cops getting hurt and going out sick. And one of my captains got hit so hard, he didn't know who he was for 20 hours. It was amazing. And while I was in those riots, our moderate congressman was marching with BLM and the defund the police crowd. You know, he calls weapons, even in the hands of police, weapons of war. He wants to take any military style equipment out of the hands of law enforcement and actually calls them weapons of war. But if you look at Minneapolis, what was it, like 2 months ago, where they needed that armored car to go into a barricade situation and they were getting fired upon? You saw those big bullet holes. That's a weapon of defense, my friend. You cannot remove that from ours. So I think it's great that that you think even when he was the Ulster County, he was a little bit more moderate. But if that's a little bit more moderate, then how far to the left is he now? You know,
I mean, he's gone a lot more. Absolutely. And, and I agree with you. There are things that he did, and I actually forgot about those things. And I'm happy that you bring them up. And one thing I like about what you're doing right now, Alison, and I will say this right now, you're attacking. Thank you. Thank you. Because there's too many conservatives and people on the right that don't attack anymore. So I first have to say thank you.
Well, I don't even see this as attacking. You know, he's got to be proud. He's proud of the record that he has in his leftist ideology. All I'm doing is allowing for the voters to see that this is who he actually is. I'm bringing it to the forefront. He can hide behind all the cute words that he wants, but his actions put people in jeopardy. If you can look at the House Republicans back in May, a year ago, they passed H.R. 2, the Secure Border Act, right?
Yep.
Now, we know he's a sanctuary city guy. We know he's a sanctuary county guy. We know he's a sanctuary state guy. He voted against that. That was a standalone border security act that would have funded our great, brave border patrol, border protection, I should say, that would have completed the border wall, reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, which, oh my God, you're looking at the southern border now. The idea that Remain in Mexico is not reinstated with Biden's latest executive order. You saw, I'll go down that rabbit hole in a minute. But this is who Pat Ryan is. And if it wasn't in an election year, he's voting against H.R. 2, right? The Secure the Border Act, and 96% along Biden's nonsense policy lines. Now you're in an election year and you see Pat Ryan stand up and go, oh, we need border security. Wait, what, Pat? Oh, this is unsustainable. Oh, wait, what, Pat? You did this, Pat. You caused this. You could have stood up and said enough is enough. You could have stood up and said, the people that I represent in the Hudson Valley, the people that I represent in New York, and the people that I represent in the United States of America mean more than partisan nonsense. And you could have done something about it, but he chose not to. So to give him moderate, I mean, that's the wolf in sheep's clothing that he is. Now to get even into the economy, you're talking about, I am all for investing in America and job creation. And you see people like Pat Ryan, people like Kathy Hochul, and people like Joe Biden over and over and over again, attacking our small businesses, attacking our farms, attacking our energy independence. Look at New York State. Let's look at just New York State. In New York State alone, we sit atop the Marcellus and Utica shales. We could be safely extracting our natural resources and bringing jobs back to New York State. We could not only be energy independent in New York State, but we could be exporting energy, making New York State more prosperous.
And I don't think people even know about that. I really don't think people, that's not spoken enough. And I give, and this is something that has bothered me, and it's bothered me about a lot of the New York Republicans, that they're not willing to talk a lot about these things. If they are, I don't hear it. They're not bringing it up, and I have a problem with a lot of the New York Republican representatives right now. So I'm hoping that when you get in, that you can set some of them straight.
So I'm not a politician, right? I'm a cop. That's who I am. That's what I am. I decided to go into government to try to save our cities, our states, and our country. But I am not a politician. I am a cop, and I will never be a politician. And I don't know how to politically talk around a subject. I'm really bad at it. And actually, my team is very frustrated with me because I will answer you, and I will answer you honestly. And I will say, what I need to say. In fact, I did a radio interview when I was first running for lieutenant governor, and they allowed 20 minutes for the interview. And he asked me a question. I don't know what it was, but I said, yes. And he was like, what do you mean, yes? And I said, yes. The answer is yes. And he goes, you have 20 minutes to answer that question. I said, I don't need to answer around the question. The answer is yes. But as far as the Republican Party, what we have to do now is we have to realize that we are one team. We are on the right side of the issues. We have to stop the infighting within our party, and we have to make sure that we are fighting for the American values, for the people of America, and we are making sure that because I will submit all day long that this is not coming in 2024. This is not going to be a red wave.
No.
This is a common sense wave. This is a red, white, and blue wave. This is going to be Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike standing up and saying, I'm sorry, enough is enough. We are battling for the heart and soul of our country. We know what's right and wrong. We know what's good and evil. We know what's up and down. And this is absolutely unacceptable. And you're going to see that top down, especially in New York State, and I believe in the country, you're going to see the top down ticket helping each other, working with each other, and making sure that we all cross that finish line together, because it is that important. We are battling for the heart and soul of our country. And coming back from these, even the economy, like you were talking about, what we did during COVID, what happened during COVID, Lord Cuomo actually was on the Hill testifying today. And what he did and what Kathy Hochul was complicit with is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. That nursing home order that he refuses even now to take responsibility for, it incenses me. All of those people died. They died scared. They died alone. They died not seeing their children, not holding their loved ones' hands. It was horrible. And we as Americans, what did we do? I was so proud of us in the beginning. They came on the TV and the radio and they said, we have a problem. And all of America said, you know what? We don't know what this is. And we have people with comorbidities. We have our elderly. We have people that are susceptible to death. So what we're going to do is shut down a thriving economy for 14 days. We'll shut that down and we will stand by each other as Americans. 2.5 years later, we were still in shutdowns. Yep. And Lord Cuomo and the rest of the blue states and the government officials had the audacity to decide who was essential and who was not, who was able to put food on their table and who was not. How dare they? How dare they? They imposed sweeping regulations. They closed down businesses. Instead of allowing places like open air parks and gyms where people could get healthy, they allowed liquor stores and bars to still. I mean, think about what they did. But I will submit, I know I'm off on a tangent. You have to corral me. You have to corral me. But look at what they did. And I'll say, with it, darkness comes light, right? Yep. What they did to our children is absolutely unacceptable. Masking children, when you are a young child, they're not adults. You can't see a smiling through someone's eyes as a child.
Not putting them back in school after 2 weeks and realizing that this does not affect kids, which was known very early. Go ahead, Dave. You have something.
The thing that you guys don't understand is that, Andrew Cuomo was out there talking to the media every day. He was doing such a good job. I don't know what you're talking about.
He was a presidential candidate.
Every day. He was talking, he was going to be voted world's sexiest politician at one point.
Which is gross. I don't understand that. So I have a question for you, Allison. Being a career police officer, one of the things that I know terrified, me as a person on the right, and I'm someone, I have friends that are NYPD, friends that are cops everywhere. And, I support good cops. I love all those guys. But what scared me is the cops that were willing to go and do the unlawful things to the citizens, like closing places down, walking in there gleefully. We saw at Tillis Gym where the cops from the other town gleefully came in, and they were just doing their job, is what they're going to say, or they need to feed their family. But it terrifies me that during a time where we saw despots trying to get power, that there were so many police officers willing to go along with it. What would you say to your brothers and sisters in blue that did those types of things?
No, well, that's actually, it's a very difficult question to answer, because the way you're phrasing that, it would be like these officers took it upon themselves to enforce these laws. With executive orders, with certain things on the book, I mean, the officers have an obligation to follow law. We had a problem with our executive branch, especially in New York State, the executive branch pushing that to its limit. But I would submit that you didn't have that. Most of us were doing our jobs. Most of us were going into these riots. Most of us were dealing with citizens. Most of us were trying to do the best we could with with these lockdowns that people were fighting against. And I remember telling my cops, especially because at the time I was a commander in Brooklyn. I was a commander of multiple police. The housing develops in the developments in multiple police precincts.
Yeah.
And what happened with there is you can't drink outside, right? But I kept saying to my cops, remember, you're walking up to, it would be like you sitting on your back deck and a cop walking up to your back deck and saying, there's more than 6 people here, put the alcohol away, So it was always a balancing act to enforce the law and maintain public safety without over policing or making people feel like they were legitimately in a police state in lockdown. When you're talking about some of the sheriffs that were enforcing Lord Cuomo's orders, it's very difficult you would have anarchy if the police department all of a sudden turned and said, we're not enforcing anything that we deem to be unlawful. That would have to come from leadership. And that's a very difficult thing, because if you had every cop determining what's lawful or what's, by the letter of the law, what they can and can't enforce, you're going to have some level of anarchy. So, I mean, I support the job that the officers were trying to do, and there wasn't draconian for them. Their heart was in the right place, and they believed that they were doing their job. Our target should never be the police officers in this. Our target should be the elected officials that grossly overused their powers, forcing these police departments into situations, quite frankly, that they didn't want to be at. I mean, we didn't want to be shutting down funerals. We didn't want to be, telling people that they couldn't pray. But this was what was coming down from our elected officials, our government. But I think if you saw in the beginning, things were enforced a little bit more heavy-handed. And then when even officers and departments and leadership in departments saw that, it started to back off, because, again, you're seeing leadership that's looking into the departments and saying, all right, well, I think we're pushing this one a little bit too far. But again, if each individual cop took that upon himself with a 40,000 person police force in NYPD, you just can't say, well, I'm going right, you're going left, I'm going up, you're going down. We have to, there is a fine line between what officers are ordered to enforce and what they can step back and use discretion about.
And, and in a way, I'm okay with, blaming leadership, whether it is like, higher ups in the police force and stuff that are forcing the kind of rank and file to do that. And I'm not blaming all the cops. Like I said, I think the cops, a lot of them did do, their part. It's just always scary to me, because I look at the cops as like the first vanguard, right? If our politicians ever truly went rogue and ever truly went as despots, the police officers are people in town, are, the ones that, we go to the bar with and things like that. And it's like, I look at them as the first vanguard. So, it was such a weird situation.
That's an interesting point. And I see where you could feel that way, but let me flip that a little bit, because I don't necessarily think it's the police officers that are the first line. I think that's why we're guaranteed the Second Amendment. Yeah, I think that's why we are guaranteed, and that shall not be infringed. I think our people, our American citizens, are the first level of defense, and they are going to push back on our government when the government pushes too far. And you saw that. Saw that. And yes, the government may order police officers in there, and the police officers may be doing their jobs, but you will see the American people stand up and say enough is enough. If they were to get cute in this election year and do another pandemic, I can almost guarantee you that those lockdowns won't happen, because within days, the American public will say, no, I am essential. I'm going out of my house. And there are not enough cops to arrest every single person that's going to ignore this rule, this draconian rule. So I understand your point, but I really think that it's the American citizen that's that first line.
I like it. And interestingly enough, we had Dr. Peter McCullough on the show a few months ago, and he was talking about how they already have bird flu vaccinations ready to go. So you're talking about that potential next pandemic, next one, them wanting to lock it down. There it is. So let's hope it doesn't come to that. So I want to jump back to the economy, because, we love tangents. We love, it's a podcast. Tangents are there. But I want to talk to you something that would affect us directly here in the Hudson Valley with, the CHIPS Act that came into effect. And, IBM over here right in Poughkeepsie, right in my backyard, is going to be one of the benefactors of the CHIPS Act. And it's something that, I didn't read the whole CHIPS Act, so I will say that, I don't know what else is thrown in there. But on its face, it looks like something that could potentially benefit the Hudson Valley and the people that, you're looking to represent. What do you feel about the CHIPS Act?
So I'm all for investing in America, and I'm all for job creation, but I'm not for anything at the expense of wasteful government spending and potential national security risks.
Definitely.
There are things that have to be evaluated with that. When you talk about, even when the CHIPS Act happened towards the end of right before the 22 election, you had that federal grant, and Kathy Hochul was welcoming the corporations in, and that was again the smoke and mirrors that the Democrats do for the election. She has made New York State so business unfriendly that nobody wants to be here. So you need federal grants, wasteful government spending, and tax breaks to get the governments, the organizations back in New York. And that's what's unacceptable. When you look at the regulations that happen in New York State, obviously there's the attack on energy, right?
Yep, definitely.
There's the attack on our farmers. There is the attack and overregulation of small businesses. There is the absolutely ludicrous electric vehicle mandate.
We're going to do it with the schools. They're making all the schools also get electric buses. We're going to do it in my district.
That are going to explode.
It's not even that they're going to explode. They don't work. We don't have enough charging stations. None of these schools, these small districts especially, if you're expecting some of the smaller districts to be able to change their infrastructure to charge these monstrosities every day, and they want it to be done, I think the regulations like by 2030.
Yeah, 2030.
They want it all to change over. Like they're out of their fucking minds. I'm not gonna lie.
The date for a lot of these things is 2030.
Well, that Agenda 2030 is a thing in the UN.
Right. So yeah, we don't have a grid that's going to support it.
No.
Kathy Hochul has there's such an attack on energy. New construction, she banned gas stoves. Everything that Lee and I said she was going to do, and everybody said we were fear mongering. She did. She did. So when Lee and I were campaigning, we were up in a small town upstate, and there was a pancake breakfast that we were going to, and they lost electricity, right? But they had gas stoves, so everybody was able to eat, you know. And you're talking about our farmers with the mandates with electric vehicles, or the electric plows in New York City. They only last for an hour before they die. We can't even charge them. They're not strong enough to move snow. Think about the people in places like Buffalo, where it gets so cold. People are going to die if the electricity goes out and they can't heat their homes with gas. And again, this is the Biden administration. This is the Hochul administration. This is all the green policies that Pat Ryan supports. He's supported since he was an Ulster County executive, and he fully supports them now. This is not sustainable. And what are we doing with our attack on energy? We are not bringing New York jobs back or American jobs back. We canceled the Keystone Pipeline, and we're spending billions of dollars overseas to our adversaries. And they are mining these resources much less responsibly and much less clean than we are. And then we're paying them so that they can rearm and re-advance. And look at what's going on. We have lost our footing on the world stage. The sanctions that were on Iran were choking them. And now they have billions of dollars to fund the...
No, Allison. The billions are to go for health and to help the people. It doesn't mean that they have that billion now to go and spend extra on military, but
what was I thinking?
Crazy. It's crazy. You're just fear mongering. You're just against Middle Eastern people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not even that. You have China that's emboldened. You have Russia that's emboldened. I don't believe that Ukraine gets invaded if we had a different administration. We have lost our footing on the world stage, and we have weak leadership. And if you look at the sexual atrocities that happened on October 7th, I don't believe that happens either under a different administration. And the audacity of this administration to be calling for a ceasefire when we have hostages that are still there. There was a ceasefire October 6th, and it was broken. And, every time we put forth a ceasefire, Hamas laughs at us. Right. And they turn it down. They're not going to release these hostages. And it's absolutely horrific. And it can't go on.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, I do want to run back real quick to the economy, because I did want to say something about that real quick, because Alex, you brought up the CHIPS Act and IBM and everything. And if you find a way to give tax breaks to big corporations, they can provide jobs, no doubt. Like, look at Detroit Motor City. It had a lot of thriving business going on. But once that big corporation leaves, and if you don't have anything for people to start small businesses and be able to actually sustain economy themselves, then there's no point to it. So I feel like it's a bigger issue to really either get rid of some regulation or get rid of some things that are making it difficult for people to actually build the economy themselves, have small businesses, have these kind of entrepreneurship from just individuals and from families, in order for them to be able to have money circulating through, instead of just hoping some big corporation stays in the city or stays near it the whole time.
Absolutely. And we should be building up our towns, our cities, and our states.
Yes.
We need to we need entrepreneurship. We need to be telling our next generation that opening a business is a wonderful thing. We need to be rolling back regulations. We need to get government's hand out of our people's pockets. Government's number one job is to protect their people, and then, quite frankly, get the hell out of their lives. And that's kind of the way that works. And we are over-regulating. We're in everybody's businesses. We're telling you what's best for your children. We're telling you what's best for your family. We're telling you what's best for your small businesses. We're telling you what's best for your business. And what's happening? We have all-time high, 40-year high inflation of 9. And when it comes down a couple of points, Biden touts that it's down. Meanwhile, he took office at 1.4. We have gas prices that are out of control, grocery prices that are out of control. People are deciding whether they can put food on the table or gas in their car. And then Kathy Hochul is going to say, hey, good idea. Let's bail out the MTA and let's do congestion pricing so that we can further hurt the bedroom communities of New York City that are trying to get in there to make a living. And moms and dads and sisters and brothers and sons and daughters that have to commute there have another $15 tax, an illegal tax that's going into their pockets. And what does she do? The same thing that Joe Biden does with the smoke and mirrors. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? This is losing footing. I might lose the seat in the Hudson Valley because Pat Ryan hasn't really stood against congestion pricing up until right now. He's saying something because it's an election year. So let me pause it indefinitely. We'll redo it on November 6th. If she was serious, she could tear down all of the things that were set up in New York City to take those tolls that were already put in place. If she was serious, she would have torn them down. That she wants to instate right after the election.
And I do actually have a quick question, and this is mainly to do with campaign stuff. But my brother brought it up earlier in the show. He is usually pretty well researched in a lot of things. He reads too much stuff, honestly, for me. I don't do as much as he does. But even he forgot about Pat Ryan's prior missteps, and not missteps, but prior egregious things. I'm all over the place with my words right now. But even he forgot about these things. How exactly, because the voter turnout has been an issue in America and everywhere, really everywhere of all time for eons. It has always been an issue. How do you get people not only to remind them of the things that have been done to them, but also say, look, I am good enough that you should come out and vote for me? Because it seems to be a consistent issue for anyone and everywhere. I'm interested in this because it just seems to be a general thing with the populace that's hard to reach out, hard to get them to remember, and hard to get them to see, like, I'm good enough for that vote.
So
I know it's a lot.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to unpack it slowly, and if I miss an option, if I miss a portion of it. So number one, you got to get your message out. And the left is incredibly good at repeating their message over and over and over and over again. And you start to believe it's fact. You know, if you're told something enough, you believe it. And they're in control for the most part of the mainstream media that will use tactics like getting people energized and emotional and full of rage and anger and hatred. I see it even on my sometimes on my feed with my Twitter trolls and my trolls. They're just so outraged. They're so angry and gotta
love them.
They're not. Yeah, you do. I actually live for them. They make me very happy. So what you have to do is we have to get control of our messaging, and we have to understand that we have to get our message out. Now, the Democrats outraise us usually 2 or 3 to 1. We don't have to outraise them because they're Soros funded. There's a lot of dark money going into that. Pat Ryan himself is Soros funded and backed.
Not surprising.
Yeah. So what you have to do is raise enough to get the message out. Oh, and by the way, visit AlisonEsposito.com and help donate and volunteer to my campaign and help us get our message out. So that's number one. But number two, when it comes to voter turnout, we were busy as Americans going about our daily lives, raising our children, building our businesses, keeping ourselves out of trouble, our kids out of trouble. We're on the straight and narrow and we're living our lives. And what we saw is a country kind of get lost underneath us. How often or is civics taught in elementary, in junior high, in high school? Do we even know? And when did we stop telling our children that they were blessed and lucky to be born in the greatest country in the history of the world?
Mhm.
What we have to understand is that we as Americans forgot that voting is not a right.
Nope.
It is an obligation and it is a responsibility, and we have to get our voters out. Now, if you look at when I was going up and down the state, I was being told that Republican turnout in New York State can be as low as 27% on average. That is
It's awful.
Yeah.
So for when they were telling me that we live in a blue state and our vote doesn't count, no, we live in a red state with blue dots. But our Reds have forgotten that their vote not only counts, but it is your responsibility as an American citizen to cast that ballot. And this is why elections matter. When you ask questions about, what the overreach of government, elections have consequences. And, when you put somebody in office like Pat Ryan, when you put somebody in office like Kathy Hochul or Lord Cuomo, elections have consequences, and they will do anything to stay in power. They
Absolutely.
put power before people on every turn. So it's a civic problem. It's a civics problem. It's an education problem. It's our parents taking responsibility for making sure that our children are being raised, understanding that, if you were born in another country, your life would not be this way. You look at, let's say, like even the protesters, when you see Queers for Palestine, you're able to march with the Palestinian flag and yell Queers for Palestine because you live in the United States of America. But
just watching them clash is hilarious. Just watching them clash at the Pride rally where Palestinians are clashing with the Pride rally people because your general Middle Easterners don't believe in homosexuality. They think it's a sin. And it's wild that, they try to juxtapose this. And it's just, I don't know. The leftists are insane. We don't teach communism in schools. That's the problem. We don't teach the evils of communism. We don't teach how terrible Russia was, how terrible China was under Chairman Mao, how terrible Cambodia is, that Che Guevara is actually a douchebag Marxist that nobody should have on a shirt. We don't teach any of these things, and that's where we get a bunch of little commies that think it's a good thing. So I want to go ahead, Alison. You get the last. Then we're going to jump on.
I'll go out on a tangent again. So go ahead.
So I want to jump to our next topic, law and order, and we actually had a question in the chat here from our buddy Nate G, who watches our show. We always appreciate you, Nate. What is your take on restorative justice?
Restorative justice, to examine like the harmful impact of crime, and what is done to repair that harm and all of that stuff. So that's a Pat Ryan, Kathy Hochul, AOC concept. It really is.
That's what they say it's for, right? That's what they say it is.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you want to talk about criminal justice reform, let's talk about criminal justice reform. Let's talk honestly about criminal justice reform. The intention of criminal justice reform has nothing to do with race or where you live. If you're rich and I'm poor, and you're arrested for the same thing I am, right? A low-level property crime, maybe first-time offense. Let's say it was shoplifting. Mm-hmm. There's no reason that I have to wait in jail to see the judge and to have it be adjudicated because I can't afford $100 bail. This is what we're talking about with criminal justice reform. But when you're talking about violent repeat offenders that are gaming the system, that have multiple violent offenses under their belt, and they're being released to do it again and again and again, this is not what criminal justice reform was meant to be. Okay, we have very, very dangerous policies in New York State and around the country, but in New York,
especially the city too.
Yep.
Absolutely, you have rogue district attorneys. You have New York State is the only state that the judges are not allowed to weigh dangerousness, flight risk, past criminal history, and potential reoffense. Think about that. So we just have to let them out. You had migrants from another country beat the hell out of New York City cops, and they were flipping off the cameras then within hours.
Because they knew they didn't care.
They didn't care. They didn't care. So listen, it's not rocket science. Here it goes. Hold criminals accountable for their actions. Done. Look at this. Look at this. Now, if you want to talk about why a criminal got there, now there's a discussion. And we need more when it comes to school choice and parental involvement and making sure every kid has quality education and opportunity zones and apprenticeship, and making sure kids have options not for the street gangs. And there's so much that can be done. But the fruits of our labor are seen 20 years from now. What we need to do is invest in our kids. It doesn't matter who you look like or what you look like, what your skin color is, what gender you are, or what God you pray to. Every American child deserves quality education and opportunities. But once a criminal is assaulting a cop or raping a woman or pulling a gun, I'm sorry, but it's over.
Yeah, and I would say this is like the issue of like how a criminal got there is more of a cultural thing. Like there are some government things, maybe like you said, where they have like certain entrepreneurship things for them or whatever like that, like for kids coming out, like you could do that. But that's more of a cultural thing. When it comes to like policing and stuff, like enforcing the law is what you're supposed that's supposed to be happening, but it's just not happening.
Absolutely.
So, Allison, on that point, how do you incentivize police officers who sit there and look and go, I've arrested this guy already today and he's out. What the hell's the point? Like, how do you incentivize police officers to, continue to do their job and not sit there and look at it and go,
I'm getting demoralized.
And also sitting there looking and going, listen, I know this guy's violent. I want to see my family. I know they're not going to do anything to him. Like, why am I like, how do you keep cops doing their job when they know that they're getting undermined every step of the way by the people in power?
All right, well, brace yourself, because this is going to be about a 35-minute answer.
Can we truncate it?
All right, I will. I'll do it. I'll do it in one word. How about I do it in one word?
Let's see it.
Vote.
There it is.
Okay, but here's what the real answer is. Cops are some of the greatest people in the world, and I truly believe that being a police officer is a calling. It is an absolute calling. So what I would say is the heart of a cop is a sheepdog, right? Now, the general public doesn't really like us because we're able to do violence on their behalf. So we remind them of the wolf. And the wolf doesn't like us because we are the line of defense that stops him from getting to the people, right? So it's the heart of a cop and the heart of a sheepdog. And they will go out and they will do their jobs over and over and over again. And I saw my cops, and this is the reason that you and I are having this conversation now, and I'm not still with the NYPD. I saw my cops go out every single day and remove loaded illegal firearms off the waistbands of criminals, sometimes 2, 3, and 4 times, same perp. And those perps were back in the precinct collecting their property to go home before my officers were done even filing the arrest. Okay. I saw them going out every day with fear in their eyes, not the typical fear, right? They raise their right hand. They understand they may not make it home to their families. We understand that. We get that. That's part of it. But this was a fear of losing their jobs and potentially their freedom for doing the job that society needs them to do. Here's the thing. While my opponent, Pat Ryan, was marching with the defund the police crowd, we do not defund our police. We fund them. We give them the training, the resources, the equipment to be able to do such a difficult job with the courtesy and professionalism and the compassion that society demands of them.
See, Allison, you're wrong. We don't need police officers. Replace every single police district with social workers. We need 40,000 social workers that are responding to violent crime in New York City.
Yeah, and then you see what happens with that, and the poor social workers get dead because they're not equipped for it. Listen, no officer goes into any situation and wants to use force, or especially deadly force. But when you are arresting a violent criminal or an emotionally disturbed person who doesn't want to go with you, it never looks pretty. Okay, it just doesn't. And that's why when you have rogue city councils that institute policies like the diaphragm law and diaphragm rules, and you can't put your knee on somebody's back when an officer is worried about where they're placing their hands rather than fighting for their lives, you get dead cops. So again, it goes back to leadership and voting and standing by your officers. The reason I left my beloved cops, who I love more than my next breath of air, is because of what was going on. And I realized that I needed to be the change. I looked at the seat that I was sitting in and the hat that I was wearing, and I realized I was sitting in the wrong seat and wearing the wrong hat to be able to affect the change that New York so desperately needed, that my cops so desperately needed. Do you know what cops need? They need qualified immunity. They shouldn't be targeted for doing their job properly with good intentions. Now, don't get me wrong. Transparency is key and we can always be better. And nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. But we need qualified immunity. We need law enforcement Bill of Rights. We need, and I will push for, a federal Bill of Rights. And if you have rogue district attorneys like our city's Alvin Bragg, right, like New York City's Alvin Bragg, who believes DA stands for defense attorney and refuses to cooperate or do his job and uphold his oath of office unless it's Trump and these trumped up nonsensical charges, that's the only thing he's going to pursue. But you're going to see a federal Bill of Rights that's going to say, you know what? You don't want to prosecute assault on a police officer or homicide of a police officer? Guess what? It's a federal crime, and we'll take it to the AUSA.
And the one thing is, like, I think a lot of cops are actually enjoying the body cams because a lot of cops, that are wearing them.
You deal with sometimes.
Yeah, it shows that you deal with, but it also shows when they're trying to claim something. And I don't know why some precincts don't release these body cams significantly quicker. I can imagine politics are getting involved with that. But a lot of these times, especially where we're seeing like the white cop shooting the black person dead. And once a body cam comes out, it reveals that they were doing their job. I will say a good 99% of the time. Yes. And I think that that's something that is big. And I would like to see, that become a thing. Because I think most cops enjoy the fact that they can be protected when they're just doing their job and they're doing their training. And one thing that I thought of that I don't know how realistic this will be in New York City. It might be difficult to do. But why don't we implement a program where cops, like you guys have your certain beats, right? You stay around certain areas, you patrol. Why don't we have a program which it will be difficult to take time out of the day, but where cops quite literally get out of the car on the beat that they're in, and every once in a while walk into these buildings and areas and just introduce themselves to the people? Because I feel like a huge issue is people don't see cops as people. They see them as a uniform. They see them as a badge. They see them as a threat. And what's one of the best ways to disarm somebody? Going to talk to them. You do it all the time. You're walking around now as a politician and they might think that you're a Republican, you're evil. You talk to them. Okay, I might go vote for Allison, right? I think that could go such a long way if cops just walk up to people and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm around the beat. If you see my car, don't hesitate to stop me and say hello.
So there have been programs like that for decades. We used to do community policing. We used to do the park walk and talk. We used to do, we now have NCOs. You have the PAL, the PAL League. You have, you have community affairs officers. You have all of the officers that have been trained and when we started, courtesy, professionalism, and respect. Now, I'm speaking obviously mostly to the New York City Police Department because that's where my experience is. But we've done that, and I would submit that you would see a marked difference in the I guess 2000s, the early 2010 up to 2010, 2011, that where we were making huge strides in the community. Absolutely huge strides, and people were responsive, and there were many more people that love their cops than hate their cops. Okay, and I think that still happens to this day. Under the Obama administration, he started to divide the hell out of America, and
he's the worst.
Hated the original anti-cop narrative when he stood there and said that some security guard who shot a black child. He could have been my son. That wasn't even a police officer that shot him. He began that attack on the sniper that killed the Dallas cops. He began this. So what's going on is I submit that there are still many more people that believe in their officers than don't. But you have false media narrative and dangerous political rhetoric coming out of starting with the Obama administration, goes through with AOC, goes through with Biden, goes through with Pat Ryan saying police hold weapons of war. This is false rhetoric and dangerous rhetoric, and it's meant to divide. Make no mistake, the great divider that Joe Biden pretended he was going to be, he further drove the wedge in the American public. And I'll tell you that even in 2020, when I was a commander and we were dealing with bail reform and we were dealing with COVID, the individuals, the grandmothers, the mothers, the fathers, the people that were in the housing developments that I was tasked to take care of, that I was tasked to watch over, were on Zoom and conference calls with me, begging for their neighborhood police officers to be back. They were begging that we need our cops. Please, we don't hate you. We want you here. I can't leave my vestibule. I can't leave my door. I can't leave my apartment anymore because my vestibule is overrun by drug dealers slinging drugs in the lobby. I can't sit out on the bench because they're shooting again. I can't. Please come back. So I think that we have to concentrate as Americans on what unites us and not on what divides us. And we have the current administration that only wants to concentrate on what divides us. And he would love nothing more than to have our police officers be public enemy number one. Why else do you think Joe Biden would have showed up in New York City after a New York City officer was murdered in cold blood by a violent repeat offender? And he went to a fundraiser rather than paying respects to that officer's widow and saying, I will change policy. I will support the police. I will do everything I can to not let this happen again. No, but President Trump was there.
Yep. But President Trump is evil and hates everyone besides himself because he's narcissistic and terrible. So we have another comment from Nate. He wants to know if you watch Donut Operator. I know that Donut Operator is a YouTube person, and he talks a lot about law enforcement and shootings and things like that. Do you watch him at all, Allison?
So no, I don't. The donut thing is funny.
Donuts are delicious, so I think you guys should embrace it.
Well, so I said when I raised my right hand, that was the last donut I would ever eat because of the stereotype. But you know where that came from?
No, where did it come from?
You think about cops on the beat, especially way back when, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on a midnight shift, what's open? Nothing but a donut shop, a coffee shop, and a donut. And that is all you can eat. So anytime you would see at night, after business hours, after closing, where is the cop going to get something to eat? At the donut shop. He gets his coffee and his donut, and he goes on with the rest of his shift. And there you go. Tell Mr. Donut Operator that's where it came from.
Yeah.
I like the history lesson there.
Now you have Chief Wiggum from The Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly. But you want to talk about how on point the Simpsons are? Is that a little scary to anybody else?
Oh, they're time travelers, 100%. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure they decided to bring Baron Trump back, because Baron Trump's a time traveler as well. So
I have no idea what that means, so I'll just laugh.
So I want to jump on to our last topic while we still have you. I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to talk about the border because, a lot of people, especially in New York, will say, what does the border have to do with us? We're all the way in New York, right? But we know that the Biden administration was flying illegal immigrants, criminal aliens. I'm going to call them what they are. Criminal aliens up to Westchester Airport early on in his presidency. And there's a lot going on, and I see it here. I live right near the city of Poughkeepsie. I deal with people every day that talk about how NYC is being overloaded, all the major cities. What can New York do? What are you planning on doing about the immigration issue?
Rocket science. Here we go. 101 again. Close the border. Okay. So, Joe Biden was flying them in because he was padding his numbers. He didn't want as many border crossings, so he thought he'd get cute. I got to lower the border crossings, so I'll just fly them from the airports in Mexico straight into the United States of America. Isn't that amazing? This is all smoke and mirrors. Yep. Border security, make no mistake, border security is national security. And in fiscal year 2023, 300 known terrorists, 300 crossed our southern border. Those are who we caught. There were 2 million gotaways. Who's there, right? Mm-hmm. We just had 8 terrorists arrested. It was Philly, New York, and LA. And they crossed the border, and the Biden administration, quote unquote, vetted them and said, okay, you can go into our country and maybe we'll take we'll put a court case on it for a year and a half. When it's a slow news day or when it's a big news day, the Biden administration quietly dismisses 350,000 cases and puts them back into our country. Border security is national security. We have a problem at our northern border too.
Yep.
Fiscal year 23, 400 known terrorists crossed our northern border. All right. Canada's doing us no favors either. But we have a very big problem. And border security it's not just a border town issue anymore. It's every place in the United States, especially the sanctuary cities and states. Now, you look at Kathy Hochul, give us, you're cold, you're tired, you're poor, she got so cute. We're going to keep the sanctuary state policy. And then, oh my God, you can't afford it. You have to give us money. This is unsustainable. They can't come here. Well, it's fine to be a sanctuary state. It's fine to agree with an open border as long as Texas has to deal with it, as long as California or someplace else has to deal with it. Arizona. I was at the southern border in Arizona. It was horrible to watch our food pantries overrun, our hospitals overrun. People were trying to be so empathetic, but they couldn't even. A woman who was pregnant had to drive 80 miles away to give birth because they had to deal with the aliens first, because the hospitals aren't being reimbursed by the federal government. So you're seeing the hospitals struggle with supplies, with being able to pay people. This has effects, and it has tributaries that touch everywhere. And even in the home district here, right here in New York 18, two men were murdered in Middletown by a man who was waiting for a deportation trial. And then you have Pat Ryan, who thinks that sanctuary cities are a good idea, that he made Ulster County a sanctuary county. Listen, at the end of the day, you want to be cute, you want to play politics, you made Ulster County a sanctuary county, you refused to cooperate with ICE. Kathy Hochul, you could change New York State sanctuary policies with the swipe of a pen, and Joe Biden, so can you. There's blood on your hands. Laken Riley didn't have to die. The fentanyl pouring over the border didn't have to happen. This is all on your hands. And the smoke and mirrors is ridiculous. Joe Biden just said, all right, I'm going to do it as an executive order. After 3 years of saying there's nothing I can do. And he whispers, Congress has to pay me. It's so ridiculous. And then he does an executive order that allows 2,500 to cross before they'll even consider shutting down the border. And 2 days after it takes effect, 10,000 came in. He has absolutely no intention of shutting the border. This is a political stunt, an absolute political stunt from the Biden administration. And you're going to hear people who oppose, when I talk about HR2, they go, oh no, it's the Republicans' problem. It's the Republicans' problem because there was a Senate bill. It was a bipartisan Senate bill that Johnson refused because Trump killed. That is nonsense. That bill never came out of the Senate, nor was it ever going to. That would have allowed 5,000 illegal aliens to cross on a daily basis, and it would have codified things into law that nobody would have signed into law, as opposed to HR2 that actually was standalone and would have secured our border. That is still sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk. He refuses to take that up. Biden, Hochul, Pat Ryan, and the Democrats own this bloodshed, own this problem at our southern border.
And it's not even about the bloodshed either. What I go back to is we know that sex trafficking is massive. Oh my God. We know how many, not only women, but young girls are consistently raped. And if you are a person that is so compassionate that you want people to just come in, then you are condemning young girls, 12, 14, sometimes younger, to being consistently raped. So if you can keep that on your conscience, I don't understand how anyone could do that.
They are crossing children at such an alarming rate that the Border Patrol agents, or the Border Patrol teams are sickened. You have people actually leaving. It's horrible. While I was in Arizona at the southern border, they showed us where the rape trees were, where the cartels would exact their last toll before they came in. At night, while we were waiting for the migrants to cross, we heard screams. Do you know what that's like for a cop to hear screams that you can't run to, that you can't get to, that you can't help? This is on their hands. You have sex trafficking for labor. You have child trafficking for labor. You have child trafficking for sex. You have women trafficking for sex. This is horrific. You have it for labor. You have it. There were reports of black vans that were picking up children and they're just driving them in. As long as they had the name of a person that would accept them, they would just let them come into the country. We have such a problem. And if you think about the torture that these children are going through on a daily basis, I have no words, and you're fighting back tears when it comes to something like that. So yeah, you're right. It's bloodshed. It's sex trafficking. It's the fentanyl. And it's also an overburden on the taxpayers. We can't make ends meet, but there are billions and billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, that are going to feed, to close, to
with debit cards,
care for these illegal aliens. And then what happens? And then what happens when they want to when they have children here, or they need? There was one article that came out locally of some of the illegals that were brought up to the Orange County area, and the woman was given a free home, a free apartment, food. Her 2 children were living there. They were going into school, and she was beside herself that it wasn't enough because her refrigerator was dirty, and she expected more and better condition. You know,
I can't stand these people.
You can't make this up. And this is what Pat Ryan supports. You know, he can call for border security all he wants, but he's full of it. His whole past he's a walking contradiction. And it's time for him to step aside from his career politics. You know, went from Ulster County executive to short-term congressman in New York 19 and short-term congressman now in New York 18. Because on November 5th, I'm coming with a common sense wave. I'm bringing common sense and integrity back to elected office, and we are going to take our country back and once again support our hardworking Americans and make sure that there is opportunity for every American child, no matter who they are or where they come from.
So last thing I want to ask you before I let you go, and this kind of ties into the immigration and border, but it's something that I think that our House Republicans took an L on when it was such a hard line with the continuing resolution that was going on, that they wouldn't send money to Ukraine, wouldn't send money over to, you know, anyone else unless we got border down. And then what happened? It came to the midnight. They pushed a $68 billion continuing resolution. And one of my biggest issues with New York Republicans is they all voted for it. For the most part. I think very few didn't. There were a few that didn't, but most of them voted for it. And even ones that I've supported in the past that I do not support anymore, voted for it. And then they come back to their districts and say, well, you know, I got that few $1 million earmark that I was looking for, and try to tout it as a big win when they just sent taxpayer money everywhere else. So when you go in, you know, are you going to be the type of person, now I'm not telling you to like not caucus with people or whatever, but you're going to be the type of person that is going to stand up to the pressure sometimes of leadership when it comes to these types of bills, where we all know the conservative base does not want to see billions of dollars going over to Ukraine anymore. We do not want to see billions necessarily going to, you know, going crazy with Israel, because we know Israel could take care of themselves. We could support them, but they're big kids. We need to support them, you know, diplomatically. And we certainly don't want it going to Taiwan when there is no war going on. So where are you with all of that?
So that's why it's so important for us to expand our majority, so that there aren't, you know, a select few group that can halt government operations. It is imperative that we stay true to our values. However, you know, we have to expand our majority. The earmarks are part of what gets things done in small towns. I don't know that I necessarily agree with them all the time. I don't know that I necessarily disagree with them all the time. We do have to get things done for our districts, and it's hard to do. But again, that's why we have to expand our majority. We can't. We have to do better in governing. And we can't allow for these 11th hour nonsense things. I wouldn't be able to look my constituents in the eye and say that I had to let the clock run out and not be able to pay our troops or our border patrol or our police officers or government employees. You have to do everything you can before that 11th hour. I don't want to see taxpayer money going everywhere that's unaccounted. I don't. And that's why it's so important that we have a stronger administration for a stronger footing on the world stage. We keep more of our money over here. We're energy independent over here. We reopen the Keystone Pipeline over here. We're making sure we're paying our own people to do the jobs and bringing jobs and resources back and not paying nefarious people. But right now, the position that we're in is because of the lack of leadership with Joe Biden and his administration. Ukraine doesn't happen, but make no mistake, somebody like Putin, when he tells you he's going to do something, believe him. You know, he said he was going to go into Ukraine. Guess what he did? He's talking or has spoken about going into Poland. We can't allow that to happen, because then we are going to be boots on the ground. That's a very big scare. You know, what we need to do is, I don't want endless money going to Ukraine, especially if it's going for pensions and paying civilian, paying
their government
and things like that. It has to be audited. It absolutely, and it can't be a blank check. It can't be a blank check. We have to make sure we stand by, you know, regimes that are looking for world domination without putting our boots on the ground and without expending too much of our American taxpayer money. When it comes to Israel, the same thing. You know, what we spend in Israel gets spent on supplies and munitions in this country. So when it comes to Israel, it's really coming back to our country. I'm less worried about us getting that money back. And also, you have to understand, if we lose Israel, our only true ally, our greatest ally in the Middle East, they're not just chanting death to Israel. They're chanting death to America. They're coming for us too. They're here too. So we have not only a moral responsibility, but we have a personal responsibility and a selfish responsibility to make sure that Israel does not fall. And I believe that they need to do anything in their power to get their hostages back and to eradicate Hamas, and they should be supported with that. So no, I don't want wasteful spending. I want better government. I want a clearer majority where we can actually work bipartisanly, and we can, you don't want to be in a boat where you're one side or your only one side is paddling and you're spinning in circles. So we have to make sure that we're not compromising our values, but reaching across the aisle and getting things done. I don't want wasteful spending. I don't want taxpayer money going overseas. I certainly don't want it going to Iran, the number one state sponsor of terrorism, for oil and anything else, when we can be mining here, or nickel in China, who's using slave labor to make sure that that's being mined. So we have so many things that we have to work out, but we have to make sure that we're not going into a World War II. So there's a lot of balancing act. And that's why I think we need common sense individuals that believe we're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and are looking to actually govern and not just scream from the rooftops that they're trying to get something done. I think some people like to be in the minority so they can scream a lot and they can not being in the majority. So I just want to get in there. I want to understand what's going on, and I want to do the best that I can for the people of District 18, for the people of New York State, and for the people of the United States of America.
So, Alison, I look forward to you being my representative come November 5th, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, but maybe next time.
No, it's okay. So once again, she's Alison Esposito, 25-year veteran of the NYPD, former candidate for lieutenant governor, but the current candidate for Congress in New York's 18th Congressional District. That is Orange County, most of Ulster, and most of Dutchess. So I'm excited. If you want to go and donate to Alison's campaign, I have it on the screen, but it's www.alisonesposito.com. You can go find her on X over there at Esposito for New York, Instagram, also Esposito for NY, and Facebook. Same thing. Go search for her. She's on there. Now, you have an event coming up that you want to talk about, if I can recall correctly. Alison?
We have lots of events. Which one are you talking about?
You have one coming up with Speaker Johnson?
I do, and it's going to be an amazing event. I'm actually very much looking forward to it. If you want to sign up for emails at AlisonEsposito.com, we can get the information out to you. But it is coming up in June. He's going to be here. There's going to be opportunity for the people of District 18, actually anybody in the Hudson Valley who wants to come join us. I want to get as many people to this event as possible, and we're actually going to be able to take the issues that matter most to the Hudson Valley directly to the House leadership. What an opportunity this is. So everybody should come out. Everybody should support. Everybody come out and meet Speaker Johnson. I have met him a dozen or so times. He's a man of integrity. He's a man who's doing his best to try to get this ship in the right direction, to get America back on track, and to once again be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So go to AlisonEsposito.com, drop your email, get on our website. We will be pushing out dates and times as soon as they're confirmed. It's going to be at the end of June, and we're looking forward to it.
So yeah, if you're in this area, if you're in the Hudson Valley and you're someone that complains that you're never involved, this is a big way to get involved, to get your voice at least out there. Maybe, who knows if it's heard? I think it will be, but at least get out there, and then you could say, hey, I got to talk to Speaker Johnson. I got to talk to future Congresswoman Alison Esposito. So we're gonna be there. So once again, we're the Alex Esposito Show, David and I. Thank you so much for anyone that watched out there on X, YouTube, Facebook. We appreciate you all. We'll be back next week with another fun show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening.